Hello, my name is Kesha Christie, and I am so excited to be here with you today at the Ottawa Children's Storytelling Festival. Now, we are here to hear some amazing stories, and I have a few that I'm excited to share with you. Now, these stories are told on the unceded lands of the Mississauga Anishinaabe. So let's get into these stories. Have you ever thought that a turtle or a tortoise, who is known for being a very wise and slow animal, could be a trickster? Well, I have got a few stories for you. Well, this first one is going to introduce us to the idea that a tortoise is a trickster. This story is called Anansi and Turtle Have Dinner. In a time long before now, there was a rule in the village. Every village, if someone came to your house at dinner time, you had to share your meal. And well, Tortoise, who had been traveling all day, for you and I, it would have been a short distance. But for the tortoise or the turtle, it takes them a very long time. And he walked from one side of the village to the other. But on the way back, he was feeling very, very hungry. And so he could smell dinner cooking at his friend Nancy's house. And that's where he went. He made his way all the way to Nancy's door and began to knock. He had to wait. Well, Anansi, who was putting out his meal, he had rice and peas, he had chicken, he had vegetables, he had all kinds of yummy things, heard the knock on the door, and was a little bit disappointed. He said, who could be coming now at dinner time? Well, Anansi went to the door and opened it up. When he looked out, he saw no one until he looked down. That's when he saw Tortoise. And he looked and said, "Oh, hi, Tortoise. How are you doing?" And Tortoise said, "Anansi, I am here to visit you, my friend. Let us do dinner." And so that's what they did. Anansi invited in Turtle for dinner, and they sat at the big table with all of the lovely food. And when they sat down, Anansi thought to himself, and Nancy, not being one to share, was thinking of a way that he would be able to eat his entire meal without sharing with his friend. He thought to himself, When his friend reached out for the food, and Nancy said, "Turtle, stop. Your hands are dirty." Well, Turtle had been walking all day. And when he walked all day, of course, his hands and feet would be dirty. And so he decided to wash his hands. He got up from the table and made his way around the corner to wash his hands. When he got there, as soon as Anansi could see that he was out of sight, Anansi began eating all the food. Yum, 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 yum. When Turtle made it back to the table and sat down, he saw that most of the food was gone. He was a little disappointed, but was excited to grab the food that was left. He reached out again, and Anansi said, "Turtle, stop. Your hands are dirty." Well, he had to walk across Anansi's dirty floor. So yes, they were dirty. And Turtle got back up and went around the corner to wash his hands. And as soon as Turtle was out of sight, Anansi ate all of the food. Yum, 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 yum. When Turtle came back to the table, he sat down and saw that all the food was gone. Well, now he'd have to walk all the way home on a very hungry belly. He thanked Nancy for his time and began making the long walk home. But on that walk home, Turtle thought about a way that he was going to teach his friend a lesson. He thought the first thing he will do as soon as he gets home is send an invitation to Nancy for dinner. And that's what he did. The invitation went out the next day. And well, Nancy loved to eat, especially when he didn't have to cook. And Nancy picked out his fancy dinner jacket and made his way to Turtle's house. Well, Turtle knew all of the things that Nancy loved to eat and cooked them all. But there's a curious thing. Turtle lived under the water, and the table was set, and he started to bring out food because Nancy was coming. Well, Nancy skipped all the way to the edge of the river and looked into the water, realizing he would have to go down under the water. Well, Nancy was so excited he ran and jumped. But he couldn't get to the bottom. And so he tried again. He got back out and ran again and no, he couldn't get down to the bottom. So he looked around and saw a whole bunch of rocks. And Nancy was so excited. He started putting the rocks in his pockets. 1, 2, 3, 4. And when he thought he had enough, he stepped back into the water and he went all the way down to the bottom and walked his way right up to the table where Turtle had all of the food set out. Oh, this brought a smile to Nancy's face. And when he sat down, he and Turtle began to laugh. But when Nancy went to reach for the food, Turtle said, "Nancy, stop." And Nancy looked at his hands. They were clean. Turtle said, "Nancy, we don't eat with our jacket on. You must take it off." But, and Nancy tried to explain. And Turtle said, "Nope, you have to take off your jacket." Oh, so Nancy took one hand out and hugged the coat. And then he tried again to reach out, and Turtle said, "No, you have to take off your coat." "But this was a lovely jacket," Nancy said. "No, we don't eat with our coat or our jacket on." So when Nancy took his arm out of the other side and hugged it really, really tight, and he was still underwater, it was very good. But when Nancy went to reach for some delicious food to eat, he let go of the jacket, and the jacket fell to the ground, and Nancy went whoop, all the way to the top of the water. The only thing Nancy could do was look down and watch Turtle as he ate all of the delicious food. And well, we know that turtles move very slowly. They eat very slowly too. So Nancy had a very long time to think about the time where he wasn't very nice to his friend, the turtle. I told you that turtles or the tortoise can be a very trickster character too. The next story I want to share with you is one that I know you may have heard already, but this story is told a little differently. This is an old story talking about how animals got around and how they often settled most arguments with a foot race. A long, long time ago, when animals wanted to find out who was the strongest, who was the bravest, even who was the fastest, they did it all by having a race. Yes, they all got together and they decided who was going to race against who, drew a line, and there it was. The race was off about a mile long. Well, on this day, Elephant had just finished running a race and he won. Elephant was so proud of himself. He told everyone how fast he was and that he could beat anyone. Well, the hare looked at Elephant and said, "Elephant, I am faster than you." Well, the two went back and forth about who was the fastest, and guess what? Tortoise heard them arguing and said, I am faster than both of you. Elephant and the hare both started to laugh. Well, it was decided that they were going to have a race. The very next day, a line was drawn in the sand, and each one of them knew that they had to run about a mile, and they lined up at the starting line. Well, there was the hare, who knew that he was the fastest and wasn't worried about a thing. There was Elephant, who thought he was the fastest and he wasn't worried either. And Tortoise didn't say a word. On your marks, they all got ready. Get set, they were really ready. Go! Each one of the animals took off running. Well, Elephant was 1,000 times faster than Tortoise. And, well, the hare was 1,000, no, 1,000,000 times faster than the elephant. And he was off. He was running so fast that he suddenly thought, let me get a little something to eat. And he noticed some grass on the side of the trail. And he decided to stop and have himself a little bite. And so he ate and ate and ate and ate and ate. When he was feeling good enough, he took off and started lightly jogging once again, because when he looked back, he didn't see the elephant. And of course, if he couldn't see the elephant, he could not see the tortoise. But when he got to the first part of the race and looked up, there was, it was Tortoise. How did Tortoise get in front of him? So the hare thought to himself, it must have been when I was eating the delicious grass. No worries, I'm still gonna make it. And so he ran and ran and ran some more. And when he got to the next leg of the race, he looked up and saw it was Tortoise again. Well, this time the hare was running faster and he didn't stop for any food. He's gonna have to run as fast as he can to finish this race. And so he did. He was running and running and running. And when he got closer to the finish line, he started to see that there was a rock in the middle of the finish line. And he said to himself, remember to run around the rock. And the hare was running as fast as he could, faster and faster and faster. But the closer and closer he got to the finish line, he started to see that rock had 4 legs. And that rock had a tiny head. Could that mean? No, it couldn't mean it. It did. Tortoise won the race. As soon as the rock crossed the finish line, all of the animals began to cheer, and it was true. The hare lost the race to Tortoise. And where was Elephant anyway? When he crossed the finish line, he watched and saw everybody cheering the tortoise and how he won the race and was truly faster than everyone else. Well, he didn't want to be not a good sport. So he walked up to Tortoise and said, well, congratulations, Tortoise. I'm glad you won. Well, Tortoise put on a big smile and said, yes, I worked really, really hard. Well, off the hare went, feeling a little bad that he had told everyone that he would win and he didn't win the race. Well, Tortoise was busy smiling and laughing with everyone, but no one ever realized that the tortoise that began the race wasn't the same one that ended it. You see, Tortoise knew he would need some help, and so he reached out to his friends and families and asked them to stay at certain parts of the trail. And every time Hare saw a tortoise, thinking it was the original one, it wasn't. But he needed to teach his friends that not because of his size and not because of his speed meant that he could not win. And so the hare learned a very valuable lesson. I told you, the turtle or tortoise, whatever we want to call them, they are trickster characters. But there are times now that we know them as a very slow moving character and that they are very wise. Did we ever wonder why or how they became so wise? Let me tell you. This story tells us why tortoise doesn't fly. And it also tells us why they are so wise. In a time long before now, the Creator had made all of the creatures. He made them and placed them on the earth, but didn't tell them what they were to do, how they were supposed to move, or what sound they could make. And so every day, each one of the animals had to go out and practice their sound, practice how to move, whether to crawl or swim, run or walk, growl or hiss. You see, the dog got its woof, and the owl got its hoo hoo sound this way. He would practice all day and then make his way to where the animals gathered in the evening and where they would test out their sounds. And so when Owl cried out, hoo, hoo, all of the other animals agreed that sound was perfect, especially the way that the owl slowly turns its head all the way around. It was a wonderful thing. Well, now everyone else had to continue and look for what would be their sound or their movement. Well, there were two unlikely friends. There was Tortoise, who was very low to the ground, but had a very shiny shell. You could see yourself in the shell. And then there was Crow, with his long black feathers, who liked shiny things. So every time he looked in Tortoise's shell, he could see himself, and they were the best of friends. So they traveled together in the search of finding what their sound or move would be. And one day, while they were looking up into the sky, they saw the monkeys swinging through the trees, having a great time. And Crow turned to Tortoise and said, "Now that is a way to move." Turtle would agree. "Let's think of what we will do." And they sat down and they thought about it and thought about it some more. But it wasn't until a leaf fell from the tree and sailed its way down that Crow realized that Tortoise and Crow could fly. Crow turned to Tortoise and said, "We can fly!" And Tortoise said, "What a great idea!" So that night, when the animals gathered together, they sat down and they listened to all of the animals try to make their sounds, and the bear with his growl, and everyone trying to figure out whether they would crawl or swim. Crow stood up, held his chest high, and said, "Tortoise and I are going to fly." Well, this was exciting. No one knew what flying was. "Follow us to the tallest hill and we will show you." This was exciting. The very next day, all of the animals gathered at the bottom of the tallest hill, while Crow and Tortoise made their way to the top. While the animals gathered underneath that hill, they started talking with each other. The fox to the rat to the cat to the cow, they were chatting amongst themselves, and they said, "Does Tortoise know how to fly? Is this a good idea? I mean, he doesn't look like Crow. Did he think this through?" Well, they kept talking amongst themselves until they all decided that yes, Tortoise was very wise and would know if this was a good idea. Meanwhile, at the top of that hill, there was Crow and there was Tortoise. Crow stretched out his wings as far as they could go and looked down at his friend and said, "Tortoise, are you ready?" And Tortoise looked up, stretching out his legs, 1, 2, 3, and 4. "Yes, I am ready." Well, they walked all the way out to the edge and then began to count. Crow looked at Tortoise and said, "1, are you ready?" Tortoise looked up and said, "2, I am ready." And Crow said, "3." And they both leaped off the side of that hill. And Crow was sailing through the sky that all the animals went, "Ooh, ah," until someone said, "What about Tortoise? Has anyone seen Tortoise?" And when they searched the sky, they saw Tortoise falling head over tail, head over tail, head over tail, faster and faster until he hit the ground splat with a big puff of smoke. Well, all the animals rushed to see if Tortoise was okay, only to find that he was sitting there, naked. His shell had shattered and there were pieces all around. Well, you know, like I know, that our friends like to take care of us. And so all of the animals gathered all of the pieces, put them together, and made sure that there were no missing. And then they gathered mud and sap and other things to stick the pieces together. When they were done, they put it back on Tortoise's back. And then they stood back. Now that's much better. Tortoise was happy to have his shell and felt a lot better. A little dizzy from the fall, but was feeling a lot better. There was just one problem. Well, you see, Tortoise had a smooth, shiny shell that you could see yourself in. His shell wasn't smooth and it wasn't shiny. You see, from that day, Tortoise took his time before getting into anything that seemed like a really big idea. He would think twice and move once. Hence why, this is why the tortoise moves very, very slowly. Because they always remember the time when Tortoise really tried to fly. And well, it didn't work out very well. But you see, moving very slowly, he was able to answer the questions of other animals and help them find their sound and how they should move. And so, even though it took some time, because we both know how slow tortoises move, but I tell you, it took a little bit and a little more time, but the tortoise became the wisest of all of the creatures. And those are the stories that tell us how the tortoise or the turtle can be a trickster, but also the wisest of all the creatures. Thanks for listening.